Anaiya Sophia, what a gorgeous name. What a beautiful soul you are. You and I were talking about this earlier, but we've been trying to make this work for months, and then I got sick and you had some scheduling issues. And I really think that it's because we needed to talk right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, we had the beautiful portal of 2/22/22. And I don't know if you're of the same leanings I am with the number 2 being feminine, the 22, but I would love, let's start there. And we'll go into your background a little more because you're a fascinating figure. But what does that mean to you, this new portal really of 22?
Well, for me, the 22 number is reflective of Mary Magdalene's feast day. So whenever I see 22, I see Mary.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a very strong Masonic number. So to me, that brings in the esoteric, the Templar, the troubadour, the occult. It's a
All of
very
the
potent, a very potent day. And being here in Europe, I was very, very tuned into Russia and the Ukraine. And I must confess, because it was Tuesday, day of Mars, day of Aries, I thought, I bet they make a move on the 22 to 22 portal. And true enough, apparently, there was the beginnings of an invasion. Even though this is terrible and, there's so much talk of World War I and World War II, I feel that this is yet another destined and purposeful and divine step along this process, a necessary call. I'm not saying Russia is wrong, US is right, UK. No, not at all. It's just this is what is going to happen in the year 2022. It's all over the astrology.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are like, yay! I mean, for us in Europe, COVID is over. Restrictions are being dropped left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this sense of, yes, this terrible period is over. And I'm thinking, no,
Here we go. We're just
it's only
starting.
February.
Yeah. Well, 2 is, from my understanding of even number in scripture, 2 is the number of opposition, but it's also this beautiful number of feminine wholeness. And the master angel number, I don't know a whole lot about 22, but it shows up for me a lot.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, it's the Magdalene feast day, July 22nd. I feel we had a gathering of some dear Magdalene friends of mine in last night for this 2/22, and I think the general feeling is just, we're past the stage where we can just start to analyze things and figure it out up here in our heads. What's coming through are these transmissions of the heart and the womb space, and really these esoteric, as you mentioned, or wisdom teachings that they're wanting to be unearthed to hit more of a mass consciousness, and the warring that you talked about, the energy of Mars and the wars, and the masculine's going to go out fighting. These structures, these paradigms, any kind of warring, any anti is needing to be dealt with this feminine energy. To be honest, I just don't even watch the news anymore. I catch the highlights as I need to, and maybe that seems a little irresponsible to a lot of people, but I find that I need to keep my frequency in a different place. And of course, being educated and knowing what's happening in world events is super important. But I don't trust the media. I don't trust the way these things have been communicated to us. I'm very wary of it.
Absolutely.
And the history. So let's start with the Cathar prophecy, because I signed up for your Cathars Mary Magdalene course, which was so fascinating. And I'm still wading through that content. But what I find so fascinating about what you teach is the Cathar prophecy. And I know you're right there in France, right at the heart of where those, original teachings were sourced. And so what can you tell us about it, especially as it relates to kind of this new era that we're in?
Well, for about 20 years, I've been like dialed into this prophecy. And every
Mhm.
year that passes, I just mark off another year that's passed. And so when it finally landed last year in 2021, because it was spoken in 1321, August 21st, to be precise.
700 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the last Cathar parfait, which means holy person, man, woman. He didn't realize at the time that he was the last one. So he just sort of handed himself in. He was nearing the end of his life. And he never really felt that he was kind of worthy of that title anyway. He liked the ladies. He liked the colorful life. And so he still did everything that was requested of him as being a parfait, but he always sort of shied away from really claiming it.
Mhm.
So when he handed himself in and realized he was the last one, I get a sense from the writings, because the Inquisition wrote everything down. We got a nice detailed.
Yeah. And to back up, just for those who don't know what happened to the Cathars, do you want to kind of explain the bloodshed and
Sure.
carnage? Yeah.
Okay, so the Cathars, we could say they are the spiritual descendants of Mary Magdalene, because after the Holy Land, she came here to continue on the way, more in her expression, perhaps more mystical, more,
Feminine.
yeah, more esoteric.
Mm.
And so centuries later, this has really picked up momentum and is now a parallel religion, a parallel tradition, not really opposing the church, but certainly not going along with it.
Mhm.
It's freer, it's lighter. The gathering places are woodlands and springs and meadows and forests. The hierarchy, the dogma is not necessary. It really is a passing of peace from one another. So very liberated, very based on love, very based on peace and beauty. And so after a while, messages keep getting back to the Church of Rome that this is an opposing tradition and is threatening, and it's gaining popularity. And so the Pope at the time sent out not one but two crusades to absolutely eradicate it and just get rid of it. And this is where we get the word heretic.
Mm.
Heretic at its root means to choose. And so the last Cathar parfait, or the last Cathar heretic, handed himself in 1321, realized he was the last one.
How many
And
people, sorry to interrupt, about how many people were obliterated? And I know all the teachings went underground, all their prophets, everything got buried, deemed heretical and
absolutely,
buried. Mhm.
thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And even if they weren't Cathars, they were killed too.
Mm.
So towns and villages were just exterminated, men, women, children. Towards the end of this crusade, it was such a frenzy that no one really bothered to check who is who. So it was just like mass slaughter.
Mm.
And this is the descendants, spiritual descendants of Mary Magdalene, a tradition based on love,
And they were
harmony,
espousing
trust.
her teachings. They were talking about the divine coupling between Yeshua and Miriam of Magdala. It was a very, would you say, a shared, more egalitarian approach between the masculine and feminine, as opposed to the Roman Catholic rule of the time.
Absolutely. The whole lifestyle was equal in every way. There were female deacons, bishops, priestesses. It was a tradition that really welcomed and encouraged women, their voices, their opinions, the roles that they played. But more importantly, if I could say there is anything more importantly than sacred union, they had gnosis.
Mm.
And they taught or passed on ways for others to receive direct incorruptible truth, proof, evidence, whatever we want to call it, of communing with God, with the Most High, with divinity. And it was given freely. No, you got to earn it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have
to go through a priest. You don't have to go through another, like a system or an institution or a church or a figure.
No, you're not going to get tested on your knowledge.
And the church didn't like that very much. They still don't like it. Let's be honest.
No.
Churches don't like. They espouse the idea of it. Like, go have this relationship with Christ. Go have this relationship with God. Of course, leaving Mother and the Magdalene out of it, but they don't do that. But regardless, it's always this war between orthodoxy and gnosis.
Yes.
The Gnostic texts, these beautiful, rich traditions of wisdom teachings that were driven underground because it was a threat to the establishment. It was a threat to the church empire, really.
Absolutely. And that's why this word heretic to me is something that's still so very alive.
I love that word.
In this age.
Because I absolutely love the word.
As he was burning at the stake, Guillaume de Bellebus, the last Cathar, he was receiving gnosis, and he just declared, in 700 years, when the laurel turns green, we shall return.
When the laurel turns green.
Yeah, that's our native tree. And indeed, and this is staggeringly wow, 3 years ago, we had an invasion of Asian moth butterflies. And it was the laurel that they loved. And they landed in them, and they spun webs in them, and they deposited their little caterpillars in them. And within about 8 months, our laurel had turned brown and bitter and barren, and all the webbing was just hanging off it. It was quite a phenomenon. It looked like a ghostly forest. All these floating white webs with these little caterpillars in them. The second year, they returned again. And so by this time, France is now sending out a team to say, if you see any Asian moth butterflies, call this number and we'll come around and remove them, because they're damaging so much native trees. And sure enough, the following year, they did not come back. But the laurel is dead. It's brown and it just snaps in your hand. So everyone's like tuning into the prophecy in 2019, 2020, saying, look at the laurel, it's brown. Sure enough, at the beginnings of 2020, you could see that right at the root, the laurel is just starting to sprout again. So by the time early 2021 came, we've got a good 1.5 feet of fresh green laurel living again in those original trees. So it wasn't killed off. Just the part that was exposed was dead. Green new roots are growing.
That's so beautiful.
The prophecy is precise in every way.
Wow. And it's so it's like an allegory, what happened with the laurel leaf. I mean, what's happening on the earth? I mean, we were right in the throes of COVID, and I just love this idea of a group defending gnosis. And I think the awakening that's happening now, like he did say, though, he said more, though, right? I want you to talk about more of what he said, but what was the deepest heart of it? What did he say was going to actually come through 700 years later now? Like you could trace back to last August.
I don't know any more of what Guillaume Bellebust said. My interpretation of we shall return in 700 years when the laurel turns green again, it is that word heretic.
We're going to have lots of heretics in 700 years. Watch out, world.
And it is, again, going back to that root meaning, to choose. We are awakening. The scales are being taken from our eyes. We are discovering inner ears, outer ears, inner eyes, outer eyes. We are awakening to the external. We are awakening to the internal. And we are coming up to, if we haven't already reached, a very important crossroads. And that heretical ability is going to be called upon us. Technically, I don't know what it is we are choosing. But bit by bit, day by day, hour by hour, I sort of, kind of do. Maybe what I'm saying is I cannot articulate it yet, but I know it.
Yeah.
I know what the choice is, but I can't.
If the language doesn't, yeah. Well, this will move us into our next and our meaty piece of what I wanted to talk about here, and that's the initiatory path. And it's so sacred. It's so individualized. I want, you have so much wisdom about this, and I truly look at you as someone who you just embody love. You're so loving and you're so wise. And I know nobody gets that way unless they have been on this path of initiation. So I would love for you to just share with our listeners how that showed up for you, maybe just a brief, story arc of how you came into your work with the Magdalene and how this initiatory path found you, how you were initiated.
I would say the strongest hallmark of a mystic is somebody who keeps on meeting opposites. They seem attracted by polarization and the opposing meeting of things.
That sounds a lot like my life, right there.
When I was a kid, I was growing up with a passionate Irish Catholic father and a cool, dispassionate British atheist mother. So I was being swung from pillar to post. Some days I'd be snuck into the church for a secret blessing. The other days I'd be snuck across to Avebury or Stonehenge to put my hands on the standing stones. And
what a gift! What a gift.
But the two of them didn't like what they were doing. So Mum was a little bit like, Patrick, stop taking, my birth name's Julie, stop taking Julie to the church. What are you doing? Are you signing her up to be a Catholic? And my dad was like, what are you doing, Dinah, taking her to those standing circles all the time and the people that hang out there? It was said in fun and jest.
Right.
But as a kid, it's like I'm watching tennis. And yet I can feel the same quality of energy. What's in those stones is the blessing of the Holy Spirit. In my experience, that was my direct experience. And then, because my mum did not want me baptized or christened, whatever the word is, into the Catholic faith, I now began to hear heated discussions between the two of them. So my dad was afraid that I'd be exposed and vulnerable to the devil. And my mum would be, oh, there's no such thing as the devil. But the thing is, I'm like, that devil? What's that? My curiosity is now piqued. And so this strong religious, spiritual energy starts awakening now. And now I want to know everything. I want to know everything about theology. I want to know everything about paganism. And so that is how it spread and it spread and it spread. And now, of course, it's my entire life. I also remember as a kid finding out about Jesus doing 40 days in the desert. And my heart really seemed to go out to him. And I became more and more and more devout to Yeshua. Not so much Jesus of the church, but Yeshua as a human being. And filled with this sacred heart that I kept putting out a prayer, or rather a petition, from about the age of 12 onwards. Let me carry one of those days for you, with you. Let me take on a life where at the end I can say, I helped carry one of those 40 days.
Mm.
It seems as if that prayer was heard. Because a lot of material matching the kind of experiences that we hear about 40 days and 40 nights, the temptation in the desert, seemed to come my way. And you know what? I wouldn't regret or change any of it. So yes, I have seen, heard, felt, moved through, experienced the glory and the not so glorious. And that is my understanding of the mystic. Because I'm not actually choosing either of them.
You're just taking this middle path of
yeah.
the shadow and the light. And some people cannot, they don't see that as spiritual. So I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Excuse me. It's everything with your initiation. We've been programmed to fear shadow, darkness, but it's part of our experience. It's why we came here. So Absolutely. I love that you're bringing this up.
And there is a deep love and respect and reverence of the dark. And that I have no inclination to change that dark to light. No way.
You're not going to fix, you're not.
No fixing, no changing. And, a comfortable, somber, mature, ever maturing response to it. And the ability to just move. And that's why I love the Dakini so much from Tibetan Buddhism. They have this faculty in their tradition. They knew this. They had a fierce,
they were like the fierce feminine warrior goddesses type of archetypes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who would go to the worst of all places in our own head and also upon the external, go there on purpose to simply just sit and be with it. Looking every inch the personification of the darkness, the chaos, the famine, the hunger, the killing. So the Dakini looks the part. But actually, when she truly reveals what's underneath this outfit, is the most compassionate, merciful, sacred heart imaginable. You think she's tough, and she is tough, and she is fierce, and she is terrifying, and she's wrathful and passionate and sexy, and just like, wow, she obliterates the mind. She is pure raw energy. But once she's still, you see the teeniest, sweetest, most cherished, compassionate being.
So how did you come to see yourself that way? So when did you have a knowing, like, I'm being initiated into something that you could call it the feminine, the Magdalene, whatever, however it showed up for you? Definitely for me, I can literally trace, and I was telling you earlier, I can literally trace the actual pivotal time of my initiation to June of 2018 in France on the Sacred Mary Magdalene pilgrimage in the middle of the night. And I'm not going to give it the whole context here, but I was awakened and I had a very mystical experience that was not coming from within me, was definitely presence, and things happened to me energetically. And it was also kind of this like pivotal time that put me into the dark night. I didn't put it together till later, but everything came down for me after that. One of the first questions I was asked is, what do you want? And I shared from my heart what I wanted, but then what I didn't realize, and I got really angry with the divine after this, because I was like, but you asked me what I wanted and I told you. And it's like, you have to go through a major descent journey into the shadow aspects of what you think you want and what you actually want. And for me, so I can trace it literally to that time, because that later that year, everything started to just unravel. Everything I thought I knew, and all my relationships changed, and my religious experience completely was catapulted into a not knowing, and everything just upended.
I would say my turning point was 40, aged 40. Up until that path, I'd been very much on the direction of Yeshua, the Christ teachings, and the opening of the Sacred Heart. And despite making my prayer to take on one of the 40 days and seeing the occasional dark energy, it wasn't until my 40th when my first husband, wasn't with him very long, but long enough, long enough for my whole world to go woo. And it's interesting because that was also the beginning of the Magdalene and the mystic and Sophia. So I'm wondering, does everything change when you start working with the sacred feminine? Is it her duty to bring the dark night, or to introduce the unknown? Because up until that point, it was just bliss, love, sacred heart, forgiveness. It was glorious. But as soon as I swung into the sacred feminine, oh yeah, it all changed. And he represented that. So that was his teaching, his essence. And yeah, I met my Bluebeard. Bluebeard.
Sometimes it takes I don't want to say toxic masculine, and I don't want to put that on your ex-husband, but like sometimes it takes that to introduce the sacred feminine and ignite it and activate it in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was naivety. I was concerned, I was calling it innocence. I can see now, 52 years old. No, that was naivety, my love. I was concerned that I'd lose that childlike curiosity. And obviously, as I did my deep dive, yes, of course I did. But I'm pleased to say it has returned. So that childlike innocence again has returned, and it's very clean and quick to be discerning. I didn't have any discernment back then. I was trusting and youthful and trusting when I shouldn't have been trusting.
The maiden archetype, maybe.
Maiden, very, very maiden. Yeah. So for any of us in the dark night and thinking the sweetness, the gentleness, the purity may have disappeared, let me say to you, no, my dear friends, it restores itself. And it restores itself with very deep roots that can never be trampled again.
I love that. I experienced that. I went to Glastonbury this last August, and I stood over the chalice well, and I didn't expect this to happen, but all of a sudden I could feel my own purity and innocence, this childlike, divine child, maybe energy more than I was coming into, like, do a womb blessing and all these things. And that happened. But the unexpected was, this is actually you, this purity. And that's not just me, it's everyone, but I could feel it for the first time in I don't know how long, because, of the fear and guilt that gets perpetuated in our society, in our consciousness. And it had become so buried. And I didn't realize that sacred inner child it's just so holy and so pure. And I remember chanting, and it was almost like a little girl was chanting. And anyway, I bring that up because what you said was super profound. The sacred feminine's role is to introduce the unknown. And for me, one of the markers on the path, this initiatory path up to the sacred feminine and to yourself, is you go into the unknown. And we've been programmed to fear the unknown. Like it's something to be avoided. And we want all this mind stuff. We want all this certainty and we want predictability. But she says, how about something a little bit more exciting? And yeah, I'm looking at I just have to show you this crystal. Those of you watching on YouTube will see it, maybe not our listeners, but I got this at the Magdalene cave in Le Baume in France. And it was just calling to me, and I have it sitting here, and I'm bringing that up because on the path of my initiation, and just speaking for myself here, little talismans would show up, like this beautiful rose quartz. Little, books would come into my view that I would have never considered. Teachers, the path of the mystic. I don't know that it's for everyone. In fact, I know it's not. I mean, we all have that aspect to ourselves, but how would you define the mystic? Because for me, it is like just venturing on this path of the unknown, but then all of a sudden you realize you are supported, and it comes in ways and it's cloaked in ways like the stone or this book or this teaching or this travel that I'm called to. And all of a sudden I'm there and I'm like, why am I here? What is this? And then something comes out of the blue that says you're on the right track, and I'm not going to give you, it's a need to know basis. So just keep going. I'm going to give you as little as possible for you to follow this path. And when you want to come off of it, I'm going to escalate things in your life so you hop back on it.
That's it. Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but I have this thirst for logos. And for me, logos is the living word being spoken. I want to hear it. I don't care how I hear it. I might hear it in you. I might hear it in me. I might hear it in a pop song or a movie or a piece of prose. But it's not word necessarily. It's not written word. It's not even spoken word. It's what's coming through those modalities when you stumble across them. I cannot get enough of that. Like the other day, I found another gem. I just went, oh God, of course. And I think when you discover wisdom, there is this of course moment. So the other day I was going through some Gnostic texts, as you do, and I was going over Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel and all of that business. And it was only when Adam had bit into the apple that he could conceive Seth. So Cain and Abel, as we know, they didn't turn out so great. One killed the other one. So again, Adam and Eve conceiving and copulating in a lower state. And of course, the offspring are reflections of that. But only after Adam and Eve partaking of the apple, which grants them full gnosis, now little Seth comes along. And of course, it's always the complete opposite of the narrative. So the narrative is Adam and Eve took the apple, fell from dignity, and then from then onwards just having all of these like gnarly children and it not really coming to much. But no, Gnostic version, Seth was the beginning of a long lineage of kids, sons and daughters, that eventually King David was part of, that eventually Yeshua, Jesus Christ, was part of. So that was a aha moment.
That's interesting.
Oh, of course.
So those living transmissions that you receive, that kind of keeps you going. It keeps you in, you kind of live for this, like you said, this thirst for the living word.
Yes.
And that,
Yes.
I would agree with that. I was just listening to Wayne Dyer's 1993 powerful presentation about, really the crux of it was belief versus knowing. And he said beliefs are exoteric. They've been handed to you as truth, not or wisdom, and I guess you could say knowing
Yes.
is all intrinsic. It's esoteric. It's inside of you, and so it is born of what you're talking about, which is this living transmission of life and truth, and the need to know basis. Like you could go read all these ancient texts, and you could derive so much beauty and meaning and depth, and there's so much there, and all those allegories and things. But really, it's your body.
Yes.
It's now. It's the holy now.
Yeah.
And so I love that you brought that in. What is it? Logos? Is that a Greek?
Yes. Yes.
So you
Yeah.
do this, you teach the sacred body wisdom. And
Yeah, I bring everything to the body because I think when we have a retrieval of wisdom, we're having a retrieval of the soul. So, those moments when you hear, you just know, I have just received truth. I also feel I have just received light. My soul is retrieving itself. Whether it's my soul, the group soul, it doesn't really matter. I just know incoming, and it's good.
yeah.
And we need more.
Yeah. The receiving model, I think particularly women, we're so relational and we want to serve so much. And we have all these roles we play because we care so much. And it's all
Yeah.
out here, right? And so
Yes.
we don't always take the time to be fed, to be to receive, as you say, these sparks, these understandings, and this just being with a group, being with nature. I think we're coming back to that, but it's been a long haul to get here.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're in a world that doesn't encourage that. It encourages the other. Mind driven achievement, success, goals. And the feminine thrives, like we've been saying, in the unknown. And I guess that's where this body movement, not I guess, I know, that's where it's heading. Unknown movement, unknown purpose, unknown retrieval, unknown dimension, unknown timings. How long is this going to take? I don't know.
Yeah.
How long are you going to rock back and forth? I don't know. But I do also know. So
Right.
it's sending the body into this unknown, as well as the heart, as well as the soul, as well as the mind.
It's just yummy. I mean, to me, the word that's coming up is trust.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
what would you say to a dear sister listening to this who might be just in it? Like, I mean, there's one thing to be in the unknown and have a godly peace. There's another thing to be in the unknown and everything is just chaotic. All the trauma might be surfacing, or loss, grief, those things. Life as we know it, upended. I certainly have passed through that in different times in my life, but especially in 2019. That was just the year everything, and that was the year I started this podcast. But anyway, what would you say to her when she's in this territory of maybe it feels hopeless? Maybe she doesn't even think she's on a path of initiation into something higher, more beautiful for her life. How do you unearth that peace or that divine child? How has that process been for you?
Well, I would share with her what I did, which I needed to personify what was leading this. And that's when I turned to the dark feminine. And in that moment, it was the Black Madonna, because, you know, the Christ path is so strong for me that it's rare for some other being to come in. So I found my solace, I found my sanctuary in the Black Madonna. And I knew that this excruciating time was personal, intimate, timely, and essential. And as much as I had my glorious Christ figure, which was golden, and I had my Mary Magdalene on the inside, who was red, now we have a dark one.
And when people hear Black Madonna, they may not be familiar with that history, because I know it's so rich in France and all the artifacts, and it's in just a short phrase, how would you describe the Black Madonna?
Well, in the Christ path, there is obviously a huge initiatory element, the crucifixion. So the Black Madonna is personified as that which brought that immense suffering and resurrection. You could say it's the hidden side of Mary Magdalene.
Really? The death?
Yes, yes, the death, the torment, the terror, the initiation, the catalyst, and the inevitable, glorious, refreshing rebirth. So it's not just the trials and tribulations, it's the safe delivery to the other side, to the rebirth. And you could say, and I do say, it's the dark side of Mary Magdalene, or rather it's the dark element of the sacred feminine. This is what feminine does. It is rare to be completely merciful and compassionate. It is rare to be a completely loving, cherished being in the feminine. The other side is always there because it has to be. She is the custodian of the catalyst, the initiation. This is just what she does, and it's not a mean process. Although when we fight it, it's a very mean process.
I think of the dark mother, the dark goddess, the Black Madonna. I think of it as fertile, dark soil.
Yes.
Or the darkness of the womb, you could say, the germination process.
Yes.
Where it's like that seed is really just trying to, and she's just like, I gotta hug you tight.
Yeah.
I gotta put you, I gotta squeeze you.
Yes. Yes.
That's how I think of it now. It's less daunting, but it's beautiful that you found solace in the Black Madonna.
Yeah. And when I felt the searing pain of heartbreak or heartache, it was only like a nanosecond later when I would offer that up to her and just like revealing, look how real it is becoming. Look how you are breaking me open. So there was no more fight anymore. I revealed it and said, that one hurt. And I knew she was intimate and close and breathing with me and holding my hand and stroking me at night. From that moment onwards, I knew I wasn't alone. I was with a trusted, ancient, palpably capable, perfect guide. And it does have an end. And there is divine providence throughout it all. Probably the big fears is I'm going to lose everything. I can't afford. I can't do. I'm not strong enough. And it has to be that real.
Yes. You have to question the core essence of your own strength, love, and power. Everything has to be called into, like you said, the moment for you was this release of, maybe I can't do it right now. So here you go. I'm handing this. Is that surrender part? Is like you could delay that, which means you delay living in the dark. Or in my experience, the sooner that you surrender, sooner you are delivered into the rebirth.
Yes. The delay is everything in between. You're in between. It's not really living. It's not light. You think you're delaying it because you want to stay in the light, but it's not light. It's dim.
Yeah.
The light's gone. You are in a dim existence.
And we can't go to, I've done something wrong.
No.
I'm not close to God anymore, because this is what we're programmed with.
Yeah, and this
Especially
is what we'll
religion.
feel.
Yeah.
You'll feel that you're crying out to emptiness. No one's listening. The prayer is not landing. I couldn't feel love anymore. Anywhere. There was nothing that would rustle up the feeling of love. So I felt like I was in exile. I'd been pushed out of existence. But that, I realize now, is because my human heart had closed, because I was blooming terrified and anxious and stressed by everything that was happening. So then when I just leant back and started trusting how essential this was, because my ego, my character, my ancestors had wrapped this mask around me, none of it was real. And this beautiful black goddess is just trying to take it off.
Oh, wow. That's so eloquently said. I feel like we could keep going with this, but where can people find you? I know your website is anaiyasophia.com.
Yes.
It's I just encourage everyone to go see. Your website is just beautiful. And I'm coming to Le Comte. I am. Your place in France. I already know that. I knew it when I saw you posting about it on Facebook. Of course, I have followed your teachings for a while. And so it's just been an honor to have you here. Your latest offering is the Sacred Body Wisdom. It's your new body-based movement study. Where can people access that? Is that on your website as well?
Yes, I mean, I do as much as I can online, but really, I am an in-person person.
That's why I'm coming back to France, because I have to be with you.
Yeah, I just have to obey, and that is a word I'm using now. I just have to obey what's here, and what's here wants to meet you and all mystics and all those on the path of initiation, because it's time to share something, not me. What's here has something for you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just gives me chills. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Anaiya. You're a very divine feminine soul. I'm grateful for you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so, so happy we had this meeting at this time.
Me too.